Vex Thul circled Jake like a predator sizing up prey. The Skarn war leader was nearly 8 feet tall and covered in battle scars. His armor was advanced military grade with energy shields and built-in weapons systems. His claws were as long as Jake's fingers and sharp enough to cut through steel. Jake stood calmly in the center of the assembly hall, holding only his grandmother's knife. The passengers had been evacuated by the security teams, leaving just the two of them in the foam-covered room. Around them lay the bodies of over 30 Skarn pirates, all killed by humans who were supposed to be harmless civilians. "You are brave for a soft species," Vex Thul said, his voice a low growl. "But bravery will not save you. I have killed 1,000 enemies in personal combat. You are just a food preparer with a primitive blade." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but you made one big mistake." "What mistake?" "You thought humans were prey." Vex Thul lunged forward with surprising speed, his claws extended and energy shields active. He was faster than Jake had expected, but not faster than Jake could react. The human side stepped the charge and slashed with his knife, the blade scraping across the alien's energy shield in a shower of sparks. The Skarn leader spun around, backhanding Jake with one armored fist. The blow sent Jake flying across the room, but he rolled with the impact and came up ready to fight. His grandmother's knife was still in his hand. "You cannot hurt me through my shields, human. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." Jake spat blood and smiled. "I don't think you understand how this works." Vex Thul charged again, but this time Jake was ready. Instead of dodging, he went straight at the pirate leader, sliding under the swinging claws and driving his knife up toward the alien's center of mass. The blade hit the energy shield and skittered away, but Jake had expected that. What Vex Thul didn't expect was for Jake to grab onto his armor and hold on. The Skarn tried to shake him off, but Jake had spent years wrestling with large animals in his kitchen. He knew how to hang on to something that was trying to get away from him. Jake pulled himself up the alien's body, staying inside the reach of those deadly claws. His knife found the gap where the helmet connected to the neck armor, a weak point, in the energy shield coverage. The blade slid home, cutting through scales and into the vital arteries underneath. Vex Thul screamed and threw Jake across the room again. The pirate leader clutched his throat, green blood seeping between his fingers. The wound wasn't immediately fatal, but it was serious. More importantly, it had shown him that the human could hurt him. "Impossible," Vex Thul gasped. "My armor is military grade. No primitive weapon should penetrate it." Jake stood up slowly, testing his ribs where the alien's throw had impacted. "The thing about armor is that it always has weak points. You just have to know where to look." The Skarn leader's eyes narrowed with new respect and hatred. He activated additional weapon systems in his armor, energy blades extending from his gauntlets. "No more games, human. Now you die." But Vex Thul was wounded and angry, which made him sloppy. He came at Jake with overwhelming force but no finesse, slashing wildly with his energy blades. Jake used the alien's aggression against him, dodging and weaving, letting the pirate leader exhaust himself while looking for another opening. Jake found it when Vex Thul overextended on a particularly wild swing. The human stepped inside the alien's guard and drove his knife into the armpit joint, where the arm armor connected to the chest piece. This time the blade found vital organs, and Vex Thul's left arm went limp. The pirate leader stumbled backward, green blood flowing freely from multiple wounds. His energy shields were failing, and his armor systems were starting to malfunction. For the first time since the fight began, he looked uncertain. "What are you?" he gasped. "I'm just a cook," Jake said, advancing slowly. "But I'm also human, and you made the mistake of thinking that made me weak." Vex Thul made one last desperate attack, pouring all his remaining strength into a final charge. Jake met him head-on, his knife finding the gap in the alien's chest armor and sliding between the ribs to pierce the heart. The Skarn war leader looked down at the blade in his chest with amazement. killed by a food preparer," he whispered. Then he collapsed to the floor and moved no more. Jake pulled his knife free and cleaned it on the alien's cloak. Around him, the assembly hall was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. The Crimson Razor pirate fleet was finished, their leader dead and their warriors scattered. Captain Zethkar's voice came over the ship's communication system. "All passengers and crew, this is your captain. The pirate threat has been eliminated. We are secure and awaiting the arrival of galactic patrol vessels. I want to personally thank our human crew members, who showed today that courage and determination can overcome any odds." Jake made his way back to his kitchen, stepping over the bodies of the pirates he had killed hours earlier. The room was a mess, but it was still his domain. He began cleaning up, preparing to cook again when the passengers were ready to eat. 3 hours later, the Galactic Patrol arrived to find the Stellar Majesty secure and its passengers safe. The patrol officers were amazed to discover that a handful of humans had defeated an entire pirate fleet using nothing but improvised weapons and tactical thinking. The story spread quickly through galactic news networks. Within days, every species in the galaxy was talking about the human cook who had killed dozens of Skarn warriors with kitchen knives. Military analysts began studying human combat doctrine, trying to understand how such a peaceful species could be so deadly when threatened. Jake gave only one interview to the galactic media. "People keep asking me how I was able to fight all those pirates," he said. "The truth is, I didn't do anything special. I just used the skills I already had and applied them to a different problem. Humans are good at adapting. We're good at solving problems. And we're very good at protecting the people we care about." The interviewer, a nervous Centaurian journalist, asked the question that everyone wanted answered. "Do you consider yourself a warrior now, Chef Martinez?" Jake thought about that for a moment. "No, I'm still a cook. But I think people need to understand something about humans. We don't fight because we want to. We fight because sometimes we have to. And when we do fight, we fight to win." Within weeks of the incident, human colonies throughout the galaxy reported increased interest from military recruiters. Species that had previously seen humans as useful technicians and service workers suddenly realized they were looking at a potential military asset. But Jake wasn't interested in becoming a soldier. He went back to his kitchen aboard the Stellar Majesty, where he continued to create amazing meals for passengers from across the galaxy. The only difference was that now his knife roll included a small plaque that read, "In memory of the passengers and crew of the Stellar Majesty, who learned that sometimes the most dangerous person on a ship is the one making dinner." Captain Zethkar kept his promise about the raise. He also made sure that every ship in the cruise line carried at least a dozen human crew members, just in case. Other shipping companies began following suit, advertising their human crew members as a safety feature. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans might work as cooks, janitors, engineers, and technicians. They might seem peaceful and harmless compared to warrior species like the Valorians or the Skarn. But underneath that peaceful exterior was something that had once conquered an entire planet full of predators. And sometimes when innocent people were threatened, that ancient predator woke up and reminded the galaxy why humans had no natural enemies on their homeworld. Jake Martinez continued to cook for another 10 years before finally retiring to a small farm on a human colony world. He never spoke publicly about the pirate attack again, preferring to let his knives do the talking in the kitchen where they belonged. But every year on the anniversary of the attack, he received messages from across the galaxy, from the passengers he had saved from their families, from species who had heard the story and understood what it meant. The messages all said the same thing. "Thank you for reminding us that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. And sometimes the most important battles are fought by ordinary people doing extraordinary things." Jake would read the messages, smile, and go back to his garden. He had vegetables to grow and meals to prepare. After all, he was just a cook. but he was also human, and that made all the difference. 3 days passed on the Stellar Fang. Jake had settled into a routine that made him look like a recovering prisoner. He woke up late, ate slowly, and spent time talking with crew members who had free time. But every moment was calculated. Every conversation had a purpose. "Where are we going?" Jake asked Commander Thesra during breakfast. He made his voice sound curious, but not worried. "To Kethamoro Station," she replied. "It's one of our main naval bases. You'll be safer there until we can arrange transport back to human space." Jake nodded and smiled. "That's very kind of you. Is it far?" "About 6 days' travel at our current speed." 6 days. Jake filed that information away. Kethamoro Station was one of the largest Zephyrian military bases. If there was going to be a major attack, it would likely be planned from there. Later that day, Jake was walking through the ship's corridors when he heard voices from an open doorway. 2 officers were talking in low voices. "The Admiral wants all ships ready by next week," one said. "That's cutting it close," the other replied. "We still haven't finished loading the heavy weapons." Jake slowed his walking but didn't stop. He pretended to look at a wall display while listening. "The target coordinates came in yesterday. Arcturus sector, just like we thought. 7 colonies in that sector. That's a lot of civilians. Orders are orders. The Admiral says it's necessary to end the war quickly." Jake's blood went cold, but he kept his face calm. 7 colonies in the Arcturus sector meant hundreds of thousands of civilians, men, women, children who had nothing to do with the military. He continued walking, nodding politely to the officers as he passed. They smiled back, seeing only a harmless, rescued human. That afternoon, Jake volunteered to help in the ship's communications center. "I know human communication protocols," he told the chief operator, a friendly Zephyrian named Vex Tar. "Maybe I can help you understand some of the signals you pick up." Vex Tar was happy for the help. "Human encryption is tricky," he admitted. "Your people use patterns we don't understand." As Jake worked alongside Vextar, he learned about Zephyrian communication systems, their frequencies, their encryption, methods, even their emergency codes, information that would be priceless to human intelligence. "This frequency here," Jake said, pointing to a display. "Humans use this for emergency medical transports. If you see signals on this band, it means hospital ships." "Good to know," Vextar said. "We try not to target medical vessels." Jake felt a small hope. These aliens did have honor codes. Maybe the attack on civilians wasn't supported by everyone. That evening, Jake ate dinner with several junior officers. They talked about their families, their homes, their hopes for the future. "My son just started school," said a young officer named Kelmo. "He wants to be a pilot like his father." "My daughter is getting married next month," added another. "I hope this war ends soon so I can attend the ceremony." Jake listened and smiled, but inside he felt the weight of what he knew. These weren't monsters. They were people with families and dreams, but they were also part of a military machine that was planning to kill innocent humans. On the 4th day, Jake got his biggest break. Captain Veltar invited him to the bridge during the ship's daily briefing. "I thought you might find this interesting," Veltar said. "A look at how we operate." Jake tried to hide his excitement. "Thank you, Captain. I've always been curious about military ships." The briefing covered routine ship operations, but Jake learned crucial details: the ship's weapon systems, its shield frequencies, its crew complement. He also heard references to Operation Thunderstrike, apparently the code name for the upcoming attack. After the briefing, Jake talked with Veltar privately. "Your ship is impressive," Jake said. "Much more advanced than the cargo haulers I'm used to." "Thank you," Veltar replied. "The Stellar Fang is a good ship with a good crew." "How many ships like this do you have?" Jake asked innocently. "Enough," Veltar said with a small smile. "Though I probably shouldn't discuss exact numbers with a civilian." Jake laughed. Of course. I'm just curious about everything. Being on a real warship is exciting for someone who usually hauls grain and medical supplies. But Veltar was feeling talkative. I can tell you that Kethmoro Station currently has over 200 ships preparing for operations. It's quite a sight. 200 ships. Jake kept his expression interested but casual. That sounds amazing. I'd love to see that. Perhaps you will. The station has an observation deck for visitors. That night, Jake sent another coded message to his ship. This time, the taps were more complex, containing numbers and tactical information. The Thunderstrike would relay this intelligence to human command immediately, but Jake's activities hadn't gone completely unnoticed. Sub-Commander Krickstall had been watching him carefully. Something bothers me about this human, Krickstall told his assistant, a sharp-eyed officer named Desra. He seems harmless enough, Desra replied. Just grateful to be rescued. Maybe, but he asks a lot of questions, and he's very interested in ship operations for a cargo pilot. Curiosity is natural after being imprisoned. Krickstall wasn't convinced. Run a deep background check on Jake Morrison. Check human databases, shipping records, everything. That could take days, sir. Then start now. Meanwhile, Jake continued his careful intelligence gathering. He learned that the attack was scheduled to begin in just over 70 hours. The target was indeed the Arcturus sector colonies. The Zephyrians planned to hit all 7 colonies simultaneously, targeting not just military installations, but also spaceports, communication centers, and government buildings. Many of these targets were in civilian areas. The casualties would be enormous. Jake also discovered that the attack fleet would include their newest and most powerful ships. Dreadnoughts with planet-killing weapons, fast attack cruisers for hit-and-run strikes, even experimental vessels, with technology humans had never seen. The information was vital, but Jake faced a growing problem. The longer he stayed on the ship, the more likely someone would discover his true identity. He needed to maintain his cover for just 3 more days until they reached Kethmoro Station. On the 5th day, Jake's luck almost ran out. While helping in the communications center, he automatically reached for a control panel when an emergency signal came in. His hand moved with the quick precision of a trained military officer, Vexatar noticed. You handle those controls like you've used them before. Jake's heart skipped, but he kept his voice steady. Some of the interfaces are similar to cargo ship systems. After watching you work, I guess I picked up the basics. Interesting. You learn quickly. I've always been good with technology. It's why I became a pilot instead of staying on the family farm. Vexatar seemed satisfied with the explanation, but Jake knew he had to be more careful. Military training was hard to hide completely. That evening, as the ship prepared for its final approach to Kethmoro Station, Jake made his final intelligence assessment. The Zephyrian fleet was massive, well-armed, and ready to launch a devastating attack on human civilians. But he had also learned something else important. Many of the Zephyrian officers had doubts about targeting civilians. Their honor code emphasized protecting non-combatants. The attack plan was coming from high command, not from the hearts of individual soldiers. This information might be as valuable as the tactical intelligence. If humans could find a way to appeal to Zephyrian honor, maybe the attack could be stopped without a massive battle. Jake looked out his window at the growing lights of Kethmoro Station. Hundreds of ships moved in organized patterns around the massive space station. The attack fleet was almost ready. Time was running out. Soon, Jake would have to make his move. The next phase of his mission would be the most dangerous yet. He touched his collar transmitter one final time. The message was simple but urgent. Target identified. Massive attack imminent. Beginning final phase. 40 miles away, Commander. Lisa Grant received the signal. She immediately began preparing the Thunderstrike for the most critical part of their mission. Everything depended on perfect timing and Jake's ability to maintain his cover just a little bit longer. The stakes couldn't be higher. Hundreds of thousands of innocent lives hung in the balance. Kethamoro Station grew larger on the main screen as the stellar fang approached. Jake stood on the observation deck, looking out at the massive military base with what appeared to be simple wonder, but his trained eyes were counting ships and analyzing defensive positions. The station was enormous. Shaped like a six-pointed star, it stretched for miles in every direction. Docking bays lined its edges, filled with warships of every size. Jake could see at least 3 massive dreadnoughts, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "Impressive, isn't it?" Captain Veltar said, joining Jake at the window. "I had no idea your people had built something this big," Jake replied honestly. The scale was breathtaking, even to someone who had seen human military bases. "Kethamoro has been under construction for 20 years, Veltar said with pride. "It's the crown jewel of our fleet." Jake watched as squadrons of fighters performed practice maneuvers around the station. Their movements were precise and coordinated. These weren't amateur pilots. The Zephyrian military was professional and well-trained. "Will I be staying here long?" Jake asked. "A few days at most. We need to arrange safe passage back to human space for you." A few days. Jake hoped it would be enough time to gather the final pieces of intelligence he needed, but across the ship, Sub-Commander Crixatal was putting together a troubling picture. His deep background check on Jake Morrison had turned up inconsistencies. "The shipping records don't match," his assistant Desera reported. "There's a Jake Morrison listed as a cargo pilot, but his physical description is different. Height, weight, even eye color." Crixatal studied the data. "What about the ship he was found on?" "That's even stranger. The vessel's registration shows it was destroyed in a pirate attack 6 months ago, but we found it last week." "Someone rebuilt a destroyed ship and put a fake Jake Morrison on it," Crixatal concluded. "This is no coincidence." "Should we arrest him?" Crixatal thought carefully. "Not yet. If he's a spy, we want to know who sent him and what he's learned. Increase surveillance, but don't let him know we're suspicious." As the Stellar Fang docked with Kethamoro Station, Jake was moved to guest quarters in the civilian section. The rooms were comfortable and clean, with a view of the main docking bay. From his window, Jake could see the final preparations for Operation Thunderstrike. Weapons were being loaded. Fuel tanks were being filled. Supply ships moved constantly. Between the warships and the station's storage areas, Jake estimated the fleet's size at over 300 ships, far more than human intelligence had expected. This wasn't just a raid, it was an invasion force. That evening, Jake was invited to dine with several Zephyrian officers in the station's officers' club. The conversation was relaxed and friendly. "So what will you do when you get home?" asked Commander Thesra. "Probably take a break from cargo hauling," Jake said. "This experience has made me think about finding a safer job." "Smart choice," said another officer. "Space is dangerous enough without pirates." As they talked, Jake heard fragments of conversations from other tables. References to launch schedules, target assignments, communication protocols. He absorbed every detail while maintaining his cover as a simple civilian. But he also noticed something else. Several officers expressed concerns about the upcoming operation. "Attacking civilian targets doesn't feel right," one young officer said quietly to his companion. "Orders are orders," the other replied, but he didn't sound happy about it. Jake filed this information away. The doubts about targeting civilians might be more widespread than he had thought. The next morning, Jake was given a tour of the station's public areas. His guide was a junior officer named Poltar, who was proud to show off Zephyrian engineering. "This section houses our main communications array," Poltar explained, as they walked through a corridor lined with displays. "We can coordinate with ships across the entire sector from here." Jake nodded and asked innocent questions, but he was memorizing everything. Communication frequencies, security protocols, even the layout of critical systems. And this is our tactical planning center, Poltar continued, stopping at a large window that looked into a room full of displays and working officers. Through the window, Jake could see a massive star map showing the Arcturus sector. Red indicators marked the 7 human colonies. Attack vectors and timing schedules were clearly visible on the displays. Impressive, Jake said. You can plan entire operations from this room. The best military minds in the Zephyrian fleet work here, Poltar said proudly. Jake studied the displays as long as he could without seeming suspicious. The attack plan was even more detailed than he had feared. The Zephyrians had studied every human colony, identified every defensive position, planned for every possible response. But he also saw something interesting. Several displays showed casualty estimates. The numbers were huge, but someone had marked them with symbols that looked like disapproval. Even the military planners weren't comfortable with the scale of civilian deaths. That afternoon, Jake's careful investigation was interrupted by an unexpected development. Alarms began sounding throughout the station. All personnel to alert stations, a voice announced. Unidentified vessel detected on approach vector 7. Jake looked out his window and saw fighters launching from the station. In the distance, a small ship was moving toward them. Even from far away, Jake could tell it was human design. His heart raced. That had to be the UES Thunderstrike, coming to extract him. But it was too early. The mission wasn't complete yet. Within minutes, Jake was escorted to a secure briefing room where Captain Veltar and other senior officers were gathered around a communications console. The ship appears to be a human scout vessel, reported a communications officer. It's broadcasting distress signals. Another rescue situation? Veltar asked. Possibly. The ship claims to have suffered engine damage and is requesting assistance. Jake's mind raced. Lisa Grant was following the same playbook they had used, appearing as a ship in distress to get close to the enemy. But why now? Should we offer assistance? Asked Commander Thessera. It could be a trap, warned another officer. Veltar looked thoughtful. We rescued one human already. It seems their ships are having trouble in this sector. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. The ship is specifically requesting to speak with any human survivors we might have rescued. All eyes turned to Jake. They're asking for me? He said, trying to sound confused. It appears so. They must have detected the distress beacon from your original ship. Jake felt sweat on his forehead. This was not how the mission was supposed to go, but he had to play his role. I should talk to them, Jake said. Maybe I can help. Veltar nodded. Bring him to the communications center. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake's mind worked frantically. Why had Lisa come? Early? Something must have gone wrong. Maybe human intelligence had detected the Zephyrian attack preparations through other means. In the communications center, Jake stood before a large screen showing the approaching human ship. It looked damaged, with scorch marks on its hull and flickering lights. This is Jake Morrison, he said into the communicator, using his cover identity. Who am I speaking to? Jake, came a woman's voice. Thank God you're alive. This is Commander Lisa Grant of the UES Thunderstrike. We've been searching for survivors of the pirate attacks. Jake's heart pounded. Lisa was using their real names. That meant the extraction was happening now, whether he was ready or not. Commander Grant, Jake said carefully. It's good to hear a human voice. We're badly damaged, Jake. Our engines are failing. Can the aliens provide assistance? Jake looked at Captain Veltar, who nodded. They're willing to help, Jake said. Permission to come aboard? Lisa's voice asked. As the conversation continued, Jake noticed Sub-Commander Crixtall watching him, carefully. The intelligence officer's eyes were sharp and suspicious. Something was wrong. Jake could feel the walls closing in around him. Jake, Lisa's voice said, we need to discuss your situation privately. There are things you need to know about the pirate attacks. Jake's blood chilled. Lisa was pushing too hard, too fast. She was going to blow their cover. I understand, Jake said, trying to send a warning with his tone. But it was too late. Sub-Commander Krixtall stepped forward. Captain, he said to Veltar, I think we have a problem. Veltar turned. What kind of problem? This man is not who he claims to be. My investigation has revealed significant inconsistencies in his identity. The room went silent. Jake felt every eye on him. What are you saying? Veltar asked. I'm saying that Jake Morrison is not a cargo pilot, and that ship approaching us is not a rescue vessel. Jake's mind raced through his options. The mission was blown, but he still had vital intelligence to protect. He looked at the screen showing the thunderstrike, then at the Zephyrian officers surrounding him. It was time to make a choice. Continue the deception and hope for the best, or reveal the truth and try to salvage something from the mission. The alarms were still sounding. The thunderstrike was getting closer, and Sub-Commander Krixtall was reaching for his weapon. Jake took a deep breath. Everything was about to change. The tension in the communications center was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sub-Commander Krixtall had his hand on his weapon while staring at Jake. Captain Veltar looked confused and angry. Commander Thessera stood frozen, unsure what to believe. Jake looked around the room at the Zephyrian officers he had come to know over the past week. These weren't faceless enemies anymore. They were individuals who had shown him kindness and respect. Sub-Commander Krixtall is correct, Jake said quietly. I am not who I claim to be. The words fell like stones into still water. Captain Veltar's face showed shock, then betrayal, then anger. Then who are you? Veltar demanded. Jake straightened his shoulders. When he spoke again, his voice carried the authority of command that he had been hiding for days. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Thunderstrike. I am a captain in the Human Space Navy. The effect was immediate. Several Zephyrian officers reached for their weapons. Krixtall drew his sidearm completely. You're a spy, Krixtall said. You've been gathering intelligence on our operations. Yes, Jake admitted. I have. Veltar's hands clenched into fists. We saved your life. We treated you with honor. We welcomed you as a guest. And I will never forget that kindness, Jake said. But I had a mission to complete. What mission? Thessera asked. Her voice was hurt and angry. Jake looked directly at Captain Veltar. To prevent the massacre of innocent civilians in the Arcturus sector. The room went silent except for the hum of machinery and distant alarms. We know about Operation Thunderstrike, Jake continued. We know you're planning to attack 7 civilian colonies in 72 hours. Hundreds of thousands of innocent people will die. Those colonies support the human war effort, Krixtall said. They're legitimate targets. They're farming communities and research stations, Jake replied. Most of the people there are children, elderly, and civilians who have nothing to do with the military. Captain Veltar studied Jake's face. How much do you know? Everything. Your fleet size, your attack vectors, your timing, the communication frequencies you'll use, the weapons you'll deploy, even the specific buildings you plan to target. The Zephyrian officers exchanged worried looks. If the humans knew that much, they could prepare effective defenses. But I also know something else, Jake continued. I know that many of your people are uncomfortable with targeting civilians. I've heard the conversations. I've seen the doubt in your officers' eyes. Commander Thessera stepped closer. You've been listening. To private conversations? Yes. And what I heard gives me hope that Zephyrians are better than this attack plan suggests. Krixtall raised his weapon. Enough talk. He's a spy and a threat to our operations. Wait, Captain Veltar said. I want to hear what he has to say. Jake looked at the weapon pointed at him, then back at Veltar. Your people have a reputation for honor in war, for protecting non-combatants. This attack plan goes against everything Zephyrian culture claims to value. The High Command has determined that quick victory will save lives in the long run, Thessera said, but she didn't sound convinced. Quick victory through the murder of children and farmers, Jake replied. Is that the legacy you want for your people? On the communication screen, the UES Thunderstrike was getting closer. Jake could see that it wasn't really damaged. The scorch marks were fake, part of their cover story. Your ship is not in distress, Veltar observed. No, Jake confirmed. The UES Thunderstrike is a fully operational stealth warship, the most advanced vessel in the human fleet. This caused another stir among the Zephyrian officers. Several more weapons were drawn. And right now, Jake continued calmly, it has weapons locked on this station. You're threatening us? Crixtall demanded. I'm offering you a choice, Jake said. He looked around the room, meeting each officer's eyes. You can continue with your planned attack on innocent civilians, or you can find a better way. What kind of better way? Veltar asked. Military targets only. Ship-to-ship combat between trained soldiers. War fought with honor, not massacre. Captain Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see him thinking, weighing options. You said your ship has weapons locked on us, Veltar said finally. Yes. Then why haven't you fired? Why reveal yourself at all? Jake smiled slightly. Because despite everything, I've come to respect you and your crew. You showed kindness to someone you thought was helpless. That says something about your character. Pretty words from a spy, Crixtall said. I am a spy, Jake agreed, but I'm also a soldier who believes in fighting with honor. Suddenly, Crixtall moved. He lunged toward Jake with his weapon raised, but Jake's military training took over. In one smooth motion, he stepped aside, grabbed Crixtall's wrist, and twisted. The weapon flew across the room. Crixtall hit the floor hard, but wasn't seriously injured. Jake could have broken his arm or worse, but he had used only the force necessary to disarm him. The other Zephyrian officers stared in shock. Jake had moved like a trained warrior, not a cargo pilot. I could have hurt him badly, Jake said to Captain Veltar. But I chose not to, just as I could have sabotaged your ship or injured your crew over the past week. But I didn't. Why not? Thessera asked. Because your good people caught up in a bad plan. You deserve better than to have the blood of innocents on your hands. Captain Veltar helped Crixtall to his feet. The intelligence officer was angry, but unhurt. You've been studying us, Veltar said to Jake. What have you concluded? That Zephyrians value honor above victory, that you prefer fair fights to massacres, that deep down most of your people don't want to kill civilians. And you think this matters? I think it's the key to ending this. War without either side losing their souls. The communication system crackled. This is Commander Grant, Lisa's voice said. Jake, are you all right? Jake looked at Captain Veltar, who nodded. I'm fine, Lisa, Jake said. But we have a situation. Here. Are you in danger? Not immediate danger, but we need to talk. All of us. Captain Veltar stepped closer to the communicator. Commander Grant, this is Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian fleet. Your officer has just revealed himself to be a spy. Yes, sir, Lisa's voice replied. We know. You know? Captain Morrison was under orders to reveal himself if necessary to prevent civilian casualties. We monitored his transmissions and agreed with his assessment. Jake felt a surge of pride in his crew. Lisa had been ready to support his decision, even without knowing exactly what was happening. So what happens now? Veltar asked. That depends. On you, Jake said. You can try to fight us, but my ship is more advanced than anything in your fleet. You can continue with your attack plan, but now we know all your strategies. Or what? Or we can find a different way. A way that lets both sides fight with honor. Commander Thessera spoke up. What exactly are you proposing? Jake took a deep breath. This was the most important moment of his career, maybe his life. I'm proposing that we change the rules of this war. Military targets only. Ship-to-ship combat between professional soldiers. No attacks on civilian populations. The High Command will never agree to that, Crixtall said from the floor. Maybe they will if their field commanders recommend it, Jake replied. If officers like Captain Veltar tell them there's a better way. Veltar was quiet for a long time. Jake could see him struggling with the decision. You're asking me to disobey direct orders, Veltar said finally. I'm asking you to follow a higher order, the order of honor and decency. The room fell silent except for the sound of breathing and distant machinery. On the screen, the thunderstrike hung in space, waiting. Captain Veltar looked around at his officers, then back at Jake. Sub-Commander Crixtall, he said finally. Yes, sir? Send a message to Admiral Kessmore. Tell him I need to speak with him immediately about Operation Thunderstrike. Sir? Tell him that circumstances have changed, that we may have an opportunity to achieve our strategic goals without unnecessary civilian casualties. Jake felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to end this madness. But he also knew that the hardest part was still ahead. Convincing the Zephyrian High Command to change their plans would not be easy. Everything now depended on whether honor could triumph over expedience. The next hour was the longest of Jake's life. Captain Veltar sat in his command chair, waiting for Admiral Kessmore to respond to his urgent message. Jake stood under guard nearby, no longer pretending to be anyone other than who he was. The UES Thunderstrike held position a safe distance from the station. Commander Lisa Grant had been invited aboard for negotiations, but both sides remained cautious. Admiral Kessmore will speak with you now, the communications officer reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing a large Zephyrian with dark blue skin and silver markings that indicated high rank. Admiral Kessmore's eyes were hard and calculating. Captain Veltar, the Admiral said. Explain this situation. Veltar straightened. Sir, we have captured a human intelligence officer who has provided us with valuable information about the strategic situation. What kind of information? Information that suggests we may need to reconsider the targeting parameters for Operation Thunderstrike. The Admiral's expression grew dangerous. Reconsider? The operation has been planned for months. All ships are in position. Yes, sir. But circumstances have changed. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, may I speak? Kessmore's eyes focused on him with laser intensity. You are the spy. I am Captain Jake Morrison, United Earth Ship Thunderstrike. And you believe you can convince me to abandon a military operation? I believe I can convince you to modify it in a way that serves your strategic goals while preserving your people's honor. The Admiral leaned back in his chair. Speak. Jake took a breath. Your attack plan targets civilian populations, farms, schools, hospitals, research stations. The military objectives could be achieved by targeting only spaceports, communication arrays, and defense installations. Civilian targets support the human war effort. Children and farmers don't build warships, Admiral. They grow food and study. Science. Killing them won't shorten the war. It will make humans fight harder out of anger and revenge. Admiral Kessmore was quiet for a moment. Continue. But there's something else. Something more important than tactics. Jake looked directly into the Admiral's eyes. I've spent a week among your people. I've seen their character. Zephyrians value honor, courage, and protecting the innocent. This attack plan goes against everything your culture believes. You presume to lecture me about Zephyrian culture? No, sir. I'm simply reporting what I observed. Your own officers have doubts about targeting civilians. I heard them talking. They're good soldiers who will follow orders, but they're not comfortable with those orders. Captain Veltar spoke up. The human is correct, Admiral. Many of my officers have expressed concerns about civilian casualties. Have they? The Admiral's voice was cold. Yes, sir. And I share those concerns. This was a dangerous moment. Jake held his breath as Admiral Kessmore considered his response. Captain Veltar, the Admiral said finally. "Are you questioning my orders?" "No, sir. I'm requesting permission to modify the operation in a way that achieves the same strategic goals with greater honor." "Explain." Jake stepped forward again. "Admiral, what if I told you that attacking civilians would actually hurt your war effort?" "I would ask for proof. The proof is in human psychology. We're a stubborn species. Attack our military, and we'll negotiate. Attack our children, and we'll fight to the last man." CommanderHFY spoke up. "Admiral, the human makes a valid point. Civilian casualties could prolong the war rather than end it." Admiral HFY studied the faces on his screen. "What exactly are you proposing?" Jake felt this was his moment. "A formal military engagement, ship-to-ship combat between professional forces, rules of engagement that protect non-combatants on both sides. You're suggesting we fight a gentleman's war? I'm suggesting we fight an honorable war." The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Jake could see him thinking, weighing military necessity against cultural values. "There is precedent," Admiral HFY said finally. "The War of Three Suns was fought under similar constraints. That war ended with negotiated peace and mutual respect," Captain Veltar added. "It also took 2 years longer than it might have," the Admiral pointed out. "But both sides preserved their honor," Jake said, "and the peace that followed lasted for generations." Admiral HFY leaned forward. "Captain Morrison, why should I trust the word of a spy?" "Because I could have sabotaged your operations already and didn't. Because I could have killed your people and chose not to. Because I'm offering you a way to win this war without losing your souls." The Admiral turned to Captain Veltar. "Your assessment of this human? He is dangerous but honorable. He could have caused significant damage during his time aboard my ship, but chose restraint. I believe his proposal has merit." "CommanderHFY? I agree with Captain Veltar. The human has shown honor even while deceiving us. Perhaps we should consider his proposal." "Sub-Commander Krixtal?" Krixtal looked uncomfortable. "He is still an enemy spy, Admiral. But his actions suggest he values honor as much as victory." Admiral HFY was quiet for another long moment. Then he surprised everyone. "Captain Morrison, I invoke the ancient right of Keltaran." Jake looked confused. "I'm not familiar with that term." "Keltaran is a formal warrior's parley," Captain Veltar explained. "It allows military leaders to negotiate terms of engagement before battle." "The right hasn't been invoked in over a century," CommanderHFY added. Admiral HFY nodded. "But these are unusual circumstances. Captain Morrison, do you accept the parley?" "What does it involve?" "You and I will negotiate new rules of engagement for this conflict, rules that both sides agree to follow." Jake felt a surge of hope. "I accept." The next 2 hours were intense. Admiral HFY, Captain Veltar, Jake, and Commander Grant, who had come aboard during the negotiations, worked out a detailed set of rules. Military targets only. No attacks on civilian populations, rescue of survivors from both sides, protection of medical vessels, clear identification of combatants and non-combatants. These terms will need approval from both high commands, Admiral HFY said. "Agreed," Jake replied. "But we can start with this operation." "You're asking me to call off Operation Thunderstrike?" "I'm asking you to modify it. Hit our military bases and communication centers. Avoid the civilian colonies. Show the galaxy that Zephyrians fight with honor." Admiral HFY looked around at his officers. "Captain Veltar, your recommendation?" "I recommend we accept these terms for this operation. If they prove successful, we can present them to the High Command as a model for future engagement." The Admiral was quiet for a final long moment. Then he nodded. "Very well. Operation Thunderstrike will be modified according to these terms. Military targets only." Jake felt relief wash over him. Hundreds of thousands of innocent lives had just been saved. "But Captain Morrison," the Admiral continued, "you understand, That this means you and your ship are now legitimate military targets? I understand. We'll be ready. Good. Because modified or not, this operation will proceed. We will test these rules of engagement in actual combat. When? Commander Grant asked. 48 hours. That gives both sides time to prepare for an honorable fight. As the communication ended, Jake found himself alone with Captain Veltar and his officers. You realize what you've done? Veltar asked. I hope I've helped both our peoples find a better way to fight this war. You may have, or you may have simply delayed the inevitable. Maybe. But at least now when we fight, it will be soldier against soldier, not warrior against children. Captain Veltar extended his hand in a gesture Jake recognized as Zephyrian respect between equals. You are a worthy opponent, Captain Morrison, and perhaps someday a worthy ally. Jake shook the offered hand. I hope so, Captain Veltar. I truly hope so. 2 days later, the Battle of Kethmoro Station began, but it was unlike any battle in the history of the war. Both sides fought with skill and courage, but they also fought with honor. Medical ships moved freely to rescue wounded from both fleets. Civilian areas were avoided. When ships were crippled, their crews were allowed to evacuate before the vessels were destroyed. The battle was fierce but fair. Both sides took losses, but both sides also maintained their dignity. When it was over, neither side could claim total victory, but both could claim to have fought with honor, and in the wreckage of space battle, a new possibility was born. The possibility that even enemies could fight with respect. That war didn't have to mean the abandonment of all moral principles. Jake. Morrison returned to human space with more than just intelligence about enemy capabilities. He returned with proof that even in the darkest times, honor could still matter. The war between humans and Zephyrians continued for another year. But it was a different kind of war. A war fought between warriors, not butchers. A war that both sides could live with afterward, and when peace finally came, it came because both sides had learned to respect each other even while fighting. The spy who became a prisoner who revealed himself as a commander had changed more than just one battle. He had changed the entire nature of the conflict. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemy, but from helping them remember who they want to be.